The Great Pyramid of Giza. It's the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, a monument so impossibly huge and precise that it's fascinated us for thousands of years. For 4.5 millennia, it's been standing there, a silent testament to the ambition of a lost world. You see it, and you can't help but feel a sense of awe. But what if that awe is a little misplaced? What if the story we've all been told about how it was built is just plain wrong? For centuries, we've been taught the same story. The pyramids were built with brute force and massive numbers of workers. Tens of thousands of laborers, organized under a god-king, dragged millions of stone blocks up giant ramps using nothing but ropes, sleds, and sheer willpower. It's a story of human grit, a triumph of getting things done. But new discoveries, from ancient papyrus scrolls to high-tech scans that can see through solid rock, are showing us that's not the whole story. What if the real secret to the pyramids isn't just brute force, but a kind of technology we've only just started to understand? The official story. All right, let's start with the story you learned in school, the one supported by the vast majority of archaeologists and Egyptologists. This is the mainstream view, and it's built on a century of painstaking research. And honestly, it's pretty compelling. The Great Pyramid, built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu around 2600 BC, was the result of a massive state-run project. And no, it wasn't the work of slaves. Evidence from a huge workers' village found near the pyramids, complete with bakeries, breweries, and even medical care, shows this was a skilled, well-fed, and respected workforce. These were Egyptians working to serve their king and their gods. The foundation of this official story is the physical evidence. We have the quarries, both for the local limestone and the granite that was brought from hundreds of miles away in Aswan. We have the remains of ramps and harbours. And most importantly, we have their own words. In 2013, archaeologists found the personal logbooks of a man named Mera at a 4,600-year-old harbour. Mera was an inspector, and his diary details his team's work hauling massive limestone blocks from the Tura quarries to Giza by boat. He even mentions an artificial lake that brought their boats right up to the construction site. This is a literal day-by-day account from a guy who helped build the Great Pyramid. It's about as close to a smoking gun as archaeology ever gets. For mainstream Egyptology, the case is strong. The builders were Egyptians. The purpose was a tomb. The methods, while brilliant, were based on simple mechanics: levers, sleds, and ramps, all powered by a very well-organized workforce. They argue that suggesting anything else is to underestimate the incredible skill of the ancient Egyptians. It's a solid, evidence-based story, but it's not the whole story. The problem with perfection. This is where things get complicated. The official story sounds good, but it hits a few snags when you look at the hard math of the monument itself. The Great Pyramid is made of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. If it took around 20 to 27 years to build, that means work crews, even working in rotating shifts, would have had to quarry, transport, and place a multi-ton block every few minutes of the workday. The logistics are just staggering. But it's not just the size, it's the precision. The pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy that still wows modern surveyors. Its massive 13-acre base is level to within about 2.1 centimeters. That's less than an inch. The outer casing stones, which were once polished white, were fitted together so perfectly you couldn't slip a piece of paper between them. This wasn't just brute force, this was master craftsmanship on a superhuman scale. And then there are the stones. While most are local limestone, the inner chambers are built from massive granite blocks, some weighing 50 to 60 tons. This granite was quarried in Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. How did they transport these colossal blocks, weighing as much as a modern battle tank, all that way and then lift them hundreds of feet into the air with such precision? The mainstream answer, ramps, also has its problems. A single straight ramp would have had to be over a mile long to keep a usable slope, and it would have contained more material than the pyramid itself. No evidence for a ramp that huge has ever been found. Other ideas, like a spiral ramp corkscrewing around the outside, come with their own set of nightmares. How do you turn a 60-ton block on a tight corner? The official story, for all its strength, struggles to fully explain these impossible feats. The cracks in the narrative start to show, and it's in those cracks that new ideas take root. New clues from the inside. For centuries, the pyramid's secrets were locked away inside. But today, we've got a new key: technology. The Scan Pyramids project, launched in 2015, uses non-invasive tech like muon radiography, which is like a cosmic ray X-ray, to peek through the stone. And what they've found is shaking things up. In 2017, the team announced the discovery of a massive, previously unknown void inside the pyramid, a space at least 100 feet long, right above the Grand Gallery. Then, in 2023, they confirmed another hidden corridor, about 30 feet long, right behind the main entrance. These aren't just random holes, they seem to be part of the original design. This is where the plot thickens and brings us to a theory that tries to bridge the gap. French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin has argued for years that the Great Pyramid was built from the inside out. He suggests a short, straight ramp was used for the bottom third. After that, construction switched to an internal ramp that spirals up inside the structure. The stones would have been hauled up this internal tunnel, which was built up along with the pyramid itself. For years, Houdin's theory was just that, a theory. But now the Scan Pyramids data seems to offer some tantalizing clues. Even before the latest finds, scans had shown a strange, spiraling anomaly that seemed to match the path of Houdin's proposed ramp. It's possible the voids they've found are part of this internal ramp system. Maybe a section of the corridor or a space used to maneuver the giant granite beams. It's still speculative, but it suggests a sophisticated, pre-planned system far beyond simple brute force. The radical theory of lost technology. If the internal ramp theory suggests the Egyptians were even smarter than we thought, another school of thought says they weren't just smart. They had technology we can barely comprehend. This is the world of lost ancient technology, and its biggest champion is engineer Christopher Dunn. Dunn looks at Giza with a machinist's eye, and he says, "The evidence doesn't look like the work of simple copper chisels and stone pounders." He points to things like the granite box in the king's chamber, which he claims is cut with a precision that suggests high-speed power tools. He's examined drill holes in hard granite that show a cutting speed hundreds of times faster than modern drills. He highlights perfectly flat granite surfaces and statues carved from diorite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, with a symmetry that seems impossible to do by hand. To Dunn and his supporters, these aren't just anomalies, they're tool marks from machines. They believe the Egyptians had sophisticated saws, lathes and drills. His most famous theory even suggests the Great Pyramid wasn't a tomb at all, but a giant machine, a power plant designed to harness the Earth's natural energy. This is where mainstream archaeology says, hold on. Critics argue Dunn is practicing pseudo-archaeology, seeing what he wants to see. They point out that experimental archaeology has shown that copper tools, when used with an abrasive like sand, actually can cut granite. They also make a pretty good point. If the Egyptians had all these amazing machines, where are they? No tools, no plans, no power source has ever been found. And yet, the questions raised by the artifacts remain. The precision is real, the anomalies are there. Water everywhere. While the debate over ramps and machines gets all the attention, there's another element that was central to the Egyptian world. Water. The Nile was their lifeblood, and some theories suggest it was the lifeblood of pyramid construction too. We already know from Mera's diary that canals were used to bring stone right to the Giza plateau. And physicists have shown that wetting the sand in front of a sled dramatically cuts down on a friction, letting a smaller team pull a heavy block, a technique we actually see in ancient Egyptian art. But some researchers think water played an even bigger role in lifting the stones. The water shaft theory proposes that Egyptians could have used a system of locks and gates inside the pyramid itself to float blocks upward. While there's no direct evidence for this inside the Great Pyramid, it's an intriguing idea. An even more radical water-based theory comes from chemist Joseph Davidovits. He argues the pyramid blocks weren't carved at all, they were cast. He suggests the Egyptians developed a kind of geopolymer concrete, or liquid stone. They dissolve soft limestone into a slurry, carry it up in buckets and pour it into moulds on site. This would explain the construction speed and the perfect fit of the stones. However, critics point to the clear tool marks found on many blocks and the massive granite beams, which definitely couldn't have been cast. The age question. A new bombshell. Maybe the most radical challenge to the official story isn't about how the pyramids were built, but when. The mainstream consensus dates the Giza pyramids to around 4,500 years ago, but what if they're much, much older? This idea was kicked into high gear in the 1990s by geologist Robert Schoch. He argued that the deep vertical erosion on the body of the Great Sphinx wasn't caused by wind and sand, but by thousands of years of heavy rainfall. He concluded the Sphinx must date back to a much wetter period in Egypt's history, maybe as far back as 10,000 BC, long before the pharaohs. This would mean it was built by a lost, unknown civilization. While Egyptologists have largely rejected his theory, arguing he misreads the geology and ignores other evidence, the idea of a much older Giza just won't go away. It speaks to a powerful feeling that there's a deeper, hidden history at Giza, a story that predates the pharaohs we know. It's a tantalizing, if unproven, possibility. The evidence is complex, and it often points in different directions. From internal ramps and precision machines to liquid stone and mind-bending timelines, the theories are as big as the pyramids themselves. So, which idea do you find most convincing? Do you stick with the ingenuity of the mainstream view, the lost technology of the radicals, or a truth that's somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments. Conclusion. So, who really built the pyramids? After all this, the answer is almost certainly the ancient Egyptians. The historical and archaeological evidence, from Mera's diary to the workers' tombs, is just too overwhelming to ignore. But that answer has gotten way more complex and interesting. They weren't just using brute force. The picture that's emerging is of a civilization with a deeply sophisticated grasp of engineering, logistics, and math. It's a picture that can now include ingenious internal ramps that might be confirmed by modern scans. It can include clever tricks like using water to help move multi-ton blocks. It can even allow for surprisingly effective tools that created a level of precision that we, in our modern arrogance, once dismissed as impossible for a Bronze Age culture. The debate between the mainstream and the alternative doesn't have to be a fight to the death. The radical theories, while often short on hard evidence, have forced the experts to re-examine their own ideas and investigate puzzles they might have ignored. The result is a richer, more nuanced picture of our past. The builders of the pyramids weren't aliens or people from Atlantis. They were human. But they were humans who were far more brilliant and capable than we ever gave them credit for. The Great Pyramid isn't a monument to lost technology, but to a lost appreciation for the true potential of human ingenuity. And as we keep scanning and probing its ancient stones, one thing is clear: the greatest wonder of the ancient world hasn't given up all its secrets just yet.